Welcome everyone. This is another online stream for the introduction to cybersecurity subject, which is usually held at the Ludovica University of Public Service at Budapest. And this is part of the regular class of the International Cybersecurity Studies, which is held in English for all the students who are willing to participate in this program, in this master program. My name is Csaba Krasznai, and today I have so many topics for the forthcoming 1.5 hours, so hopefully I can fit into this time frame, because I need to talk about the threats in the cyberspace. The threats in the cyberspace, which last time I just mentioned that according to our study, the Digital Mohács 3.0 research, which are the most important threats related to Hungary, and I think this is very common because that might be also very common for other countries as well. But today I will go into the depth of four, I would say four, but five, you will see why, specific threats. And just starting my presentation, not like in the last occasion when I forgot to start my presentation. So today my topic is the cyber threats, cybercrime, cyber warfare, cyber terrorism, cyber espionage, hacktivism, and the fact why I've told you that I will have 4 or 5 different cyber threats is the fact that cyber terrorism and hacktivism is quite close to each other. Therefore, I think that from my perspective, these two are just one. Some other sources, some other scientific sources are telling that they are two separate ones. So let's start the enumeration. Let's start the discussion of these topics. Starting with, first of all, why should we talk about these topics? And the answer for that is that cybercrime costs the economy $1 billion. Well, in fact, it's not just $1 billion, but $8 trillion, but who counts? So cybercrime in general is a very, very common problem. And I think that there are no countries worldwide who shouldn't deal with these interesting questions, who shouldn't deal with the fight against the cybercrime. But I think that it's not very, very common, and it's not very, very well known that cybercrime is very close to the 4 other cyber threats, general cyber threats. And cybercrime is something that if we could somehow manage the threats of cybercrime, we would have a good answer for all the other 4 threats. So starting from the cybercrime perspective and starting with one of the major cyber threats in the cyberspace which has an effect to our common life, let's just go through the history and let's go the actual situation of all the other cyber threats. So let's start with cybercrime, and I need to start it with a definition. What is cybercrime? According to the online Britannica encyclopedia, it is said that cybercrime, also called computer crime, the use of a computer as an instrument to further illegal ends, such as committing fraud, trafficking in child pornography and intellectual property, stealing identities or violating privacy. Cybercrime, especially through the internet, has grown in importance as the computer has become central to commerce, entertainment and government. Well, this is a quite common definition, I think, but if we just check, for example, the Hungarian Code of Penalty, we can see that cybercrime itself can be divided into 4 different sets. The first set, called offenses against the availability, integrity and confidentiality of computer systems and computer data. This is what is called in general hacking, because it is the one that affects the computer systems. It has some different subcategories like unauthorized access, unauthorized interception, computer data breach, computer system breach, misuse of funds, as it is written in the Hungarian Code of Penalty. But in general, I think that this is I wouldn't say the rarest, but this is not the most common type of cybercrime. But if we just check the second set, which is set computer-related offenses, and it has 2 topics, computer forgery and computer fraud, I think that the computer fraud, the online fraud itself, is one of the most common crime type worldwide. Like in Hungary, just in the last year, for example, we had approximately 20,000 cases connected to computer fraud, and in that sense it was maybe the second or the third most common crime type in Hungary, so it's very, very common. The third category here is offenses related to the content of computer data, and here there is written that the offense is related to child pornography, which is not really called child pornography anymore. It is called the child sexual exploitation, CSE, and it reflects to the sad fact that more and more such crime is appearing on the internet, and this is also a huge problem for the whole world. And last but not least, we have the offenses related to copyright or related rights infringement. So downloading, for example, non-licensed software, or downloading books or music or movies from the different torrent sites belongs to this category, which is also related or also counted as a cybercrime. So, what is the regulatory background? I mentioned that this excerpt is from the Hungarian Code of Penalty, but as I also mentioned, this is very common worldwide as well. The root for how we treat cybercrime is the Budapest Convention of Cybercrime, which was accepted by the Council of Europe in 2001. And this legal act, this international norm, is currently the basis of the cyber criminal activities, the jurisdiction of cyber criminal activities worldwide, as almost 100 countries treat the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime as the basis of the cyber criminals. I don't have enough time to go into the depths that what is the actual situation of the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime, but I would say that it's widely known and it's widely used, not just in the Western countries, but all over the world. And although it has some critics and it has some challenges, especially from the Eastern great powers like China or Russia, I think that this is still a very common understanding of cybercrime, and it really helps worldwide to be able to fight against the cyber criminal activities. And when I said that it helps worldwide, it means that cybercrime is usually a cross-border activity. It is something that should be managed with the deep cooperation of the law enforcement agencies worldwide, and that is why we have here in Europe, we have the Europol, and the Europol has some specific areas on the cybercrime activities, cybercrime related investigation activities. So based on the source from the Europol website, they are, the European law enforcement agencies together are trying to fight against the using of botnets, the creating of backdoors on compromised devices, the creating online fora to trade hacking expertise, bulletproof hosting and creating counter antivirus services, laundering traditional and virtual currencies, committing online fraud such as through online payment system carding and social engineering, various forms of online child sexual exploitation, including the distribution online of child sex abuse materials and the live streaming of child sexual abuse, and the online hosting of operations involving the sale of weapons, false passports, counterfeit and clone credit cards, and drugs and hacking services. So in general, the Europol is the one who has the right power and the right resources, building up, of course, on the possibilities of the national police units to do something against that huge wave of cybercrime, what we can see on a daily basis. But what is the actual situation? From the Europol site, we can download the so-called IOCTA report, which collects the yearly base of internet-related crimes, cyber crimes. And I think that this source, currently the IOCTA 2024 report, gives us a very good overview on the actual questions and the actual problems of cybercrime. So again, which are the major threats, which are the major problems of the cybercrime area? Well, I would say that the first one is the child sexual abuse material, of course. The child sexual abuse material, which here mentioned on the first place, and it says that the self-generated sexual material constitutes a significant and growing share of the CCAM, child sexual abuse material, that is detected online. which is very worrisome because it means that the children are creating a lot of material on themselves, and that is the one which creates the huge number of such materials online. The second one here is the investment and business email compromise and romance fraud, which is the most common types of cyber-enabled frauds. Digital skimming is also mentioned here. And yes, why I mentioned that there are more and more online frauds can be seen is that the internet users are still wants to believe in romance, wants to believe in their bosses, wants to believe in different emails, and so on and so on. So frauds are quite successful. And the third one here mentioned the problem of artificial intelligence, and in more and more cases, artificial intelligence is supporting the cyber criminals. So both in child sexual exploitation and online frauds, we can see a growing number of usage of the deepfake or ChatGPT like LLM models and so on. So in general, the latest technology advancements can really support the cyber crimes. And last but not least, we can see a mention of ransomware, which was enumerated as the largest threat in the cyberspace during the last year. But based on the deep cooperation of the law enforcement agencies worldwide, except Russia, of course, they could have very successful investigations against the largest ransomware groups, and therefore the current ransomware landscape is rearranging. Of course, they won't disappear, because until there is money on the market, there will be someone who wants to take that money. But the largest ones, the most important ransomware gangs, had some hits during the last year. And who are the actors, the criminal actors? As in my last presentation, you could see that there are various actors. Here, the report itself mentions that the number of cyber criminals entering the market continues to grow steadily, both due to the new technologies which effectively lower the barriers, and to an increasing complexity of the digital infrastructures which widens the potential attack surface. It means that the barrier itself is getting lower, so even those who were great criminals in the physical space can enter into the digital space and can reach, for example, their victims more easier. The criminal landscape remains wide-ranging, compromising both lone actors and networks with various levels of expertise and capability. It means that the cyber criminals are getting networked, of course, and then this kind of cyber crime as a service lets even the lone wolves to act successfully in the cyberspace. And high-level affiliates and developers remain an important asset, with different ransomware as a service providers competing for their services, so even capitalism can be seen on this market. But who are the targets? Anyone can be the target. Millions of victims across the EU are attacked and exploited online on a daily basis, not just multinational large companies, but even SMEs, and of course the citizens. Even us ordinary people can be the target of any kind of cybercrime activities. Multi-layered extortion models are increasingly common across the whole spectrum of cybercrime threats. This kind of blackmailing works from the largest companies to the ordinary citizens as well. So never pay for blackmailing. Never let the cyber criminals to get your money through blackmailing. They are very creative, and they can use the latest technologies to blackmail you, even with things, even with videos, even with different texts that never had happened. Cybercrime enables, first of all, the dark web continues to be a key enabler for cybercrime. Yes, the darknet is there. Sometimes it's good to be there. The Tor network, for example, itself is not necessarily means some devilish thing, but it is one of the enabler of cybercrime, like the cryptocurrencies as well. And not just the Bitcoin, but other alternative coins, altcoins, can also be a good, useful tool for the cyber criminals to get money, for example, from blackmailing. and the cybercriminal abuse of a legitimate end-to-end encryption messaging application like Telegram, which is, I think, a notable example, also an enabler for the communication of the companies. But where it is coming, what is the source of this whole thing? And I need to go back to the early 1960s, to the MIT, to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is the birthplace of the hacker community. Everything was started around that time when in the MIT at the Tech Model Railroad Club, Signal and Power Subcommittee, the first hackers have been appeared and started to first hack, of course, the Model Railroad Club, and later on those computers which were transmitted there by the US military. And originally, as we could see in a previous presentation, hacking meant creative pranks on the students, and later it was the illegal, or I would say creative rearrangement of the Model Railway Club. And this was the beginning of the hacker ethics as well, because hacking had always had its ethical background, and crime and non-crime, which is, by the way, based on the code of penalty, is a crime, but the hacks which were not counted as something illegal is originally coming from that part. So cyber lifestyle is coming from the 1960s, so more than 60 years ago the whole thing was started. And I need to define here what is a hacker. I need to quote here the MIT's the jargon file, which is the latest version, is the 4.4.8 from the early 1990s. And I think that this picture, then this screenshot, really describes that what is a hacker and how the hacker should be treated. So, who is a hacker? Originally, someone who makes furniture with an axe. So that is the original meaning of hacking, coming from Great Britain, coming from the 14th century. But this is, of course, not the hacker definition, what we know now. So the original definition says that a hacker is a person who enjoys exploring the details of programmable systems and how to stretch their capabilities, as opposed to most users who prefer to learn only the minimum necessary. According to the RFC 1392, the Internet Users Glossary, useful amplifies this as a person who delights in having an intimate understanding of the internal workings of a system, computers and computer networks in particular. So as you can see, no illegal things can be found from this definition. But hacker is also someone who programs enthusiastically, even obsessively, or who enjoys programming rather than just theorizing about programming. Person capable of appreciating a hack value. So even myself, who is appreciating the hack of the value, can be a hacker. A person who is good at programming quickly, an expert at a particular program, or one who frequently does work using it or on it, is in a Unix hacker definition can also be found here. An expert or enthusiast of any kind. One might be an astronomy hacker, for example. One who enjoys the intellectual challenge of creatively overcoming or circumventing limitations. And deprecated, a malicious meddler who tries to discover sensitive information by poking around. Hence, password hacker, network hacker. The correct term of this for this sense is a cracker. And as you can see in this definition, the hackers, those who think that they will change the life on the positive way, are really trying to separate themselves from those who are committing cyber crimes, from those who are in this one named cracker. But of course, I mentioned the hacker ethics, which is coming from 1984, and it is written Stephen Levy's Hackers, Heroes of Computer Revolution book. It also gives us a better understanding that why hacking is something that is quite different from cybercrime. Because the hacker ethic itself says that access to computer and anything that can teach us something about how the world works should be unlimited and total. All information should be accessible. Questionable what the nations are thinking about these data leaks, but yeah, all information should be accessible. Don't trust the authorities, support decentralization. Another quote why I think that the hackers and the national security, the internal security cannot be good friends. Hackers should be judged by what they do, not by their education, age, race, or position. Create art and beauty on your computer. Computers can make your life better. Sometimes I'm questioning the last one, but anyway. So these are the basic points of the hacktivism, or not the hacktivism, sorry, of the hacker subculture. And these quotes and these basic values in the hacker ethics are saying nothing about stealing money from the online world. So we can start from that one, starting from this fact that hacking itself shouldn't be necessarily something bad. But the hackers had another leap forward, and this community has created the word hacktivism, which is by definition the empowerment of people as a goal to make the world aware of injustices, human rights violations, in other words, to organize the flow of information worldwide without restrictions and censorship. This is hacktivism, which is coming from Count Zero, from the Cult of the Dead Cow hacking group. And as you can see, it's much more like politics and not just hacking the computers, not just understanding the internal setup of the computers. This is pure politics. And as the hackers had get into the politics at the end of the 1980s, beginning of the 1990s, something had been changed, and cybercrime itself, which was around money, had a new understanding, and we started to think hacking besides the hacking into the computers for financial reasons, towards hacking into the computers to support some kind of a political background. And that led to the emergence of Anonymous, and I think that most of my viewers know the Anonymous because they are the best known franchise in the hacker community. And it was started in 2003. In 2003, and they grew up from the 4chan Channel B forum, when everyone could write in his or her views following the traditional free speech of the United States, thinking on that they shouldn't give out their names, they shouldn't create any name, any identification, any nickname on that forum. They just simply wrote in there as Anonymous. And the Anonymous itself became a good brand that was supported by a movie. The title of the movie was V for Vendetta, and the well-known masks are coming from that movie. So, well, I think it's very funny. But the free speech movement, Anonymous, and so on, as soon as they start wearing this mask, should pay some kind of a fee for the Warner Studios, who are the owner of this mask and the owner of the V for Vendetta. So, anyway, it was started in 2003, but the word itself became familiar with Anonymous first in 2008, when the Project Channelology cyber attack against the Church of the Scientology was started with the Anonymous brand. And this was the first time when the hacktivists started to use the Guy Fawkes mask from the V for Vendetta movie. And there were some more actions in the name of the Anonymous, which is a decentralized organization, so it's not an organization. Anyone can start its own Anonymous, and anyone can start to use the approach of Anonymous. So in 2010, the Operation Payback was also very well known, because that was initiated against the copyright holders and against those card companies who didn't let to support the WikiLeaks website. In 2011 and 2012, there were a lot of ongoing operations. In 2013, there was the Million Mask March in 400 cities. And since then, there are continuous operations. So the Anonymous itself is still active in the Russian-Ukrainian war as well. And there are some Anonymous groups who are supporting the Ukrainian side, and there are some anonymous organizations who are supporting the really Sudanese young guys who created the Anonymous, but they lived in the United States and they were arrested by the FBI just a few days ago. So the Anonymous is, I think, a good example that how hackers are getting into not just the politics, but also into a real war. But the hacktivist movement was first, I think, get too close to the nation-state operations in case of WikiLeaks. The WikiLeaks itself was founded in 2006 by an Australian hacker called Julian Assange. I think that his name is very well known for most of you. And the aim of the WikiLeaks was to provide a portal, provide a good source to leak the documents that were previously hacked out or leaked from governments. Like governments, and this I just want to reflect back to the hacker ethics, information wants to be free, so they wanted to provide that kind of website to be able to leak even those documents which are very, very sensitive from the national security perspective. Just a few examples. The Iraq and Afghanistan war documents were leaked here. The US diplomatic correspondence was leaked here. The Hillary Clinton and John Podesta emails during the previous in 2016 US presidential election was also leaked here. And the Vault 7 leaks were also published here, which was a CIA operations to find backdoors in different smart devices. So what is common in that one? Of course, all of them are related to the United States. Not just US focused documents were leaked on the WikiLeaks, but mostly, or the best known leaks were around the United States. So it's not so surprising that the United States itself became very upset of these leaks. And that is why they really wanted Julian Assange to be arrested and to be extradited to the United States. And they started a chase against Julian Assange, who had to escape to the embassy of Ecuador in London. And he spent so many years between 2012 and 2019 in this embassy. And then he was given to the UK authorities in 2019. And this year, he was released back to Australia because he had an agreement with the US governments. So I think that we will never hear again on Julian Assange, and I think that maybe the WikiLeaks story was ended. And the fact why this story was a little bit shady is that I want to quote here Garry Kasparov, the former chess world champion, who had this quote on Twitter. That was Twitter during that time and not X. And he wrote there that in 2016 that anyone can edit Wikipedia, but only the KGB can edit WikiLeaks. So both the WikiLeaks and Julian Assange was too close to the Russian secret services. And that is, I think that the United States really wanted the WikiLeaks to be stopped and to leak some more documents. And I think that in 2024, where we are, it's totally understandable why WikiLeaks is not really a good and welcoming friends of the Western countries, especially the United States nowadays. So, what does it mean for us? And this is, I want to reflect back that the hacktivists are now supporting either the Ukrainian or the Russian parties in this war, but I also need to go back to this quote, back to 2016, when, although the war itself was started between Russia and Ukraine, but it was more on the hybrid warfare status, where Russia started to include the hackers and the hacktivists into the support of its own activities. And by the way, it was started in 2007 when Russia has attacked Estonia during that time. So the involvement of hackers into the national cyber warfare or cyber espionage movements was not started today, it was started before, but nowadays we can state that the hackers and the hacktivists, all whether they know or they don't know if they are part of a national activity, so they are active parties, they are active active parties of cyber warfare. So why is it a problem? Because there are real nation-state actors who are doing some real cyber domain operations in order to get information. So I need to turn here to cyber espionage. And I can quote here Sun Tzu, who was a general 500 years before Christ, and he has a famous book. Maybe he's not the writer, maybe he's just, I would say, the intention for this book, The Art of War. And in The Art of War, we can read the following sentences. Therefore, the wise prince and the excellent general starts a war and wins a victory over the enemy, and thus acquires meritorious deeds by which he stands out from the crowd by trying to know everything in advance. This foreknowledge cannot be acquired from spirits, nor by deductions drawn from the pattern of other things, nor by calculations. A knowledge of the enemy's position must always be acquired from man. So information should be gathered from the enemy, and nowadays how this kind of information can be gathered from the enemy? Well, most of the information is created in digital format, in the form of digital data. Therefore, the enemy's computers, the enemy's IT systems can be a very good source of the information. But first I need to stop here. What is intelligence and why intelligence is important? And if we understand that why intelligence, which has a double meaning in that sense, because intelligence means that we have new knowledge, and intelligence means the services, the secret services who are gathering the source for this new knowledge. So for intelligence, there is a need for the collection of the information, the analysis and the evaluation, and the aim is to clarify a specific situation and use it for your own advantage. And well, digital data, the collection of information, the source of information is out there in both in open source format or non-open source format where hacking is necessary. And the analysis and the evolution, the artificial intelligence itself is there, which can be fed by data and which can be used to support the analysis and the evaluation. The only thing is what is needed is to describe, to define that why this intelligence activity should be done and why it is needed to gather the huge source of the information. The normal intelligence process itself can be seen on the screen. So there is a need for mission and vision set by the political leaders. So the intelligence itself is done because of political reasons. And then as a next step, a daily briefing and debate with analysts and decision makers this is the one when that kind of mission and vision can be repolished based on the actual information, which can be the source of the news and the analysis keep up to date with fast changing data, information and intelligence reports. So the environment itself is changing around us, and we need to follow this changing environment because new wars are coming. When I'm streaming this video, for example, it can be foreseen that a clash between Iran and Israel is something that will necessarily happen. I don't know what the future holds, but at the information what I have now, it is clear that this war will be started soon. The question is how and what will happen. So in that case, the news and the analysis, so from open source and non-open source information, the intelligence units should support the politicians with somehow to foresee the future, as it could be read from Sun Tzu. The news cycle, news needs are determined by decision makers. Based on the information, what they are getting, they require new information, and this new information creates this news cycle, enabling the intelligence units to find the relevant information, what is necessary for decision making. Strategic planning, a long-term view of the planned future. So based on the information, we have to prepare for the future, and we have to have the strategic vision that what will happen and how we react for this future, keeping in mind that what is the strategic intent of our country. Scenario planning, possible future developments. This is something that can be computerized and was computerized for a while, that the different strategy scenarios which are in this actual situation, what can be those future scenarios. And these future scenarios are the ones who are helping us to, like in the chess game, see the forthcoming 2 or 3 steps and have the right decisions if something is really happening. But this can be built up from the so-called mosaic approach, from historical, current and future and strategic perspectives from different actors, divergent views, because different professionals, different experts are seeing the same situation from different angles, and the collection of these different angles can help in the creation of future scenarios. And as the result, the planning conference the planning conference can be held where discussing the results, problems and processes are the ones which will lead us to the future steps. And for intelligence, there are so many sources. These are the so-called INS, and we have so many intelligence sources which together creates the future steps, that together creates the view on the future. The first one is, for example, human intelligence. This one is the classical spying, getting the information from people. Those people who are communicating nowadays in a digital format. Second, the signal intelligence, which means the radioelectronic detection, the classical wiretapping of the radio transmission. Electronic intelligence, which consists the radio intelligence, part of the telemetry, radar transmitted and cyber intelligence. So the classical cyber open source intelligence belongs to the electronic intelligence. We also have imagery intelligence, image-based intelligence, which is the analysis of the different pictures, and for example the artificial intelligence can help a lot on that field nowadays. The measurement and signature intelligence, which consists the ABC detections. This is atomic, biological and chemical, so the nuclear, biological and chemical weapon detection. The geospatial intelligence or geoinformation intelligence, which means the usage of satellite related intelligence. And we also have the the technical intelligence, the technical data acquisition on different sources. So those are the basics of the intelligence gatherings, and from all the information for us, cyber intelligence is the most important one. How can we gather information from the cyberspace? Well, there are 3 different levels of the cyberspace. The highest level called surface intelligence, which according to this measurement gives the 4% of the total digital data. The surface web is the one that can be seen by Google. So this one is what we can see, what we can crawl, what we can find following the Google queries and so on and so on. So this is the classical open source intelligence. But we also have the deep web, which consists the 90% of the all digital data. That doesn't really mean that we cannot get open source intelligence from the deep web, but these deep web information cannot be accessed by the crawlers, by Google. Which means that, for example, if we register to one of the deep web sources, if we just pay a few money as a registration fee for the deep web surfaces, we can also use this as open source intelligence. So what can be in that set? Medical records, legal documents, scientific reports, subscription information, competitor websites, academic information, multilingual databases, financial records, government resources, organizational specific repositories. So the deep web is also a very good source of information, and doesn't necessarily mean illegal activities. And the same is also true for the dark web. The dark web, which is not the dark because necessarily bad things are happening there, but dark web which needs a special browser, in most of the cases a Tor browser, to be able to access the information that can be found here. At the dark web, of course, we can find a lot of illegal information, but the activists, for example, the political protesters, are also sharing a lot of information at the dark web because it's anonymous and it's very difficult to track that, who is the source of the information. So not just drug trafficking and illegal information can be found on the dark web, but also political protests and private communication can be found on the dark web. The common thing is that it needs a special browser and it's very difficult to wiretap and find either the sources or the information itself. Who are the news gathering actors? Well, there are two sources. There are the state intelligence and the business intelligence. What is the difference between business intelligence and state intelligence? Of course, the state intelligence has a higher level, higher authorization for use some special tools. But even if we are talking about business intelligence, and if we are staying at the legal side of business intelligence, it is still valuable to use the above mentioned different information sources to support the business decision making. How intelligence gathering is happening, or in general, how cyber incidents are happening. We have a very common model which was first published by the Lockheed Martin company in 2008, and it's called the cyber kill chain model. It is widely used worldwide to describe the cyber incidents, and it's widely used to understand what is necessary for a successful cyber incident. First, we have the reconnaissance phase, which means the research, the identification and the selection of the targets. It is the first phase when the attacker is trying to find the relevant information that will support him or her to carry out the cyber attack successfully, to be able to understand its future victim. The next step is called weaponization, which means pairing remote access malware with exploit into a deliverable payload. It means that as soon as we understand the operation, the IT technology and the personnel of our future victim, we can create a specific personalized attacking tool, like a malware, for example, that will have an effect at the company. Then comes the delivery, transmission of weapon to target, for example, via email, attachments, website, or USB drives. So this is the way when we transport the weapon towards the victim. And I need to stop here because there are two things that are needed for a successful cyber attack: a code and an infrastructure. We will return for that back later. So the next step is the exploitation. Once delivered, the weapons code is triggered, exploiting vulnerable applications or systems. Sometimes this exploitation means exploiting a weakness in a software. Sometimes it means exploiting the user who will click on the malware, for example, and let it just go through the network. The exploitation is the next one. That is when we enter into the computer system. And the next step is installation. The weapon installs a backdoor on target system, allowing persistent access. It means that we open up the specific computer towards the internet and let the attacker do whatever he or she needs to do, like communicating an internet-based service and getting the orders what to do next. The next step is command and control. The outside server communicates with the weapons, providing hands-on keyboard access inside the target's network. So the command and control, during the command and control phase happens the bad things. It can take a while during when the attacker is giving the orders to what to do with both the network and the computer. And the last step is here the actions on objective, where the attacker works to achieve the objective of the intrusion, which can include exfiltration or destruction of data or intrusion of another target. So whatever is the goal, it will take some time. sometimes just a few hours, sometimes even months, a few months, or even years. And during these actions or objective, the attacker is carrying out the actions why he or she has hacked into the system. And sometimes these cyber incidents are carried out by so-called APT groups. APT stands for Advanced Persistent Threat. They are the well-organized crime groups who are usually acting as a nation-supported, state-sponsored groups. So they are working for a military or working for a secret service. But the APTs can be those well-organized cybercrime gangs as well, who are very, advanced. So they have good skills, persistent, so they are continuously doing whatever they want to do, and threats, so we need to have some countermeasures against them. On the screen you can see some examples for the APT groups. This is coming from the MITRE attack framework. We will have some presentations later on the MITRE attack, but here you can see that the MITRE attack is using this APT abbreviations, APT1, APT2, APT20, 928 for example, and some alternative names as well, like for APT28, which is a Russian group. It is also called like Swallowtail or Group 74 or Sednit or Sophacy or Pound Storm, but is best known as Fancy Bear or Strontium. They belong to the Russia's main intelligence directorate of the Russian General Staff, so GRU. It's a military-based, a military-focused group, but on this list we can find some other groups as well. And a lot of countries have such APT groups for carrying out cyber espionage or cyber attacks. So, for example, in case of Russia, the U.S. government has a very extended file on the Russian cyber activities. So I recommend, for example, to read the Grizzly Steppe file, which consists of the malicious Russian cyber activities that has happened during the last president, the 2016 presidential election. Or we can also see a very good file about North Korea that was released in 2020, the guidance on the North Korean cyber threat, also coming from the US military sources. Or I can also mention here China. The Chinese activities were also very well documented in the past, but China is getting more active in the cyberspace and now had some counter steps towards the United States. So they are also very openly started to talk about the US secret cyberspace activities. So the game itself is getting more and more interesting. And I also mention here, for example, the Iranian cyber activities, the APT-33, which I think that they are very, very active in Israel now. And those who are interested in this topic can also read the details in the daily news. But I can also mention here the United Kingdom's GCHQ, which is usually on the Western sources, the GCHQ or the US NSA is not counted as APT, but in fact they are APT groups as well, because they are advanced, they are persistent, and they are a threat for the enemies of the United States or the United Kingdom. And there are a lot of other ones. I recommend here the publication from Boldizsár Bencsát, The Territorial Dispute NSA's Perspective on APT Landscape. Quite old publication, but when it was written, it just created a very interesting overview that how different countries started to build up their own APTs and how many unknown sources of advanced malwares could be identified by Dr. Benchát's group as an unknown source of threat. So there are a lot of APT groups, and that is now converging to each other. So APT groups are usually counted as something, as groups which belongs to a secret service, belongs to a military. So they are ordered, they are working in a chain of command. But in the last few years, and especially in the Russian-Ukrainian war, it was not a huge surprise for the experts, but it's getting more clearer that some countries, now we are talking about Russia of course, are using the so-called proxies. The proxies which are not working directly under the military or under any secret services or intelligence units, but are influenced or indirectly or secretly commanded by the military or the secret services. There are two specific groups who belongs here: the nationalist or patriotic groups, hacktivists, those hacktivists who are treated as nationalist or patriotic hackers, and cybercriminal groups, those organized cybercrime groups who are responsible for ransomware, for example. So the question of these proxy groups are quite interesting and quite questioning, and in general, cyber espionage from the international law perspective is questioning. Because the Tallinn Manual 2.0, which is the best source, I think, for how cyber warfare should be treated, how cyber warfare should be analyzed from the international legal background perspective, it has the article 89 has a point on cyber espionage, and it says that in peacetime cyber espionage by states is not a violation of international law per se, but the procedure they use may be against the law. So having a spying activity in peacetime, totally fine. Of course, that kind of espionage will be treated as a cyber crime in the victim country, but the international law itself doesn't have a word. I mean, it is an acceptable activity, an acceptable thing from the nation state's perspective. Meanwhile, in wartime, what we can see in Ukraine and Russia nowadays, a member of the armed forces who engages in cyber espionage activities in enemy territory loses the rights of a prisoner of war and is considered a spy before joining the armed force to which he or she belongs. Interesting that in case of war, this cyber espionage thing is treated somehow differently, and that is why the Russian spies are not really willing to move out from Russia, because they would have that kind of situation. So let me quote here Martin Libicki, who is a very well-known academic expert of cyber warfare and who had these great few sentences regarding cyber espionage, and he wrote that the lesson to consider is what message your cyber espionage activity should carry if and when it is discovered. If you don't want to create tension, double your operational security, but don't expect success. In addition, avoid intelligence gathering against military targets in a crisis, or at least approach it with techniques that can be confidentially distinguished from the preparation of a cyber attack. If, on the other hand, you want to show off your capabilities or have signal intentions, prepare a narrative that expects to be exposed. But think all this through carefully before the operation. So yes, the barrier between cyber espionage and the direct cyber attack, especially in case of a military cyber attack, is very, very thin. Therefore, it should be think twice how a nation is carrying out the cyber espionage activity. Because, for example, it can turn into cyber terrorism, like it was done in for a while in case of the United States and ransomware. So the United States government think seriously that they will treat ransomware as a cyber terrorist attack instead of cyber crime. And I think that we all know that what happens with terrorists who are attacking the United States. So I imagine drones and direct kills of Russian cyber criminals who are attacking US critical infrastructure using ransomware. So that would be a serious situation. But does cyber terrorism exist? This is the next question. Can we see cyber terrorists in the cyberspace? And first I need to define that what cyber terrorism means, and I have two definitions here. The first one is from FBI, which says that cyber terrorism is a criminal act perpetrated by the use of computers and telecommunication capabilities, resulting in violence, destruction and/or disruption of services to create fear by causing confusion and uncertainty within a given population with the goal of influencing a government or population to conform to particular political, social or ideological agenda. And the other one is from Kevin Coleman, who wrote that the premeditated use of disruptive activities or the threat thereof against computers and or networks with the intention to cause harm or further social, ideological, religious, political or similar objectives, or to intimidate any person in furtherance of such objectives. So this is cyber terrorism, but does cyber terrorism even exist? Well, the intention was there. So the ISIS had an initiative to set up the so-called United Cyber Caliphate with the different pro-Islamic activist groups like the Islamic Intelligence, the Caliphate Cyber Army, and so on and so on and so on. But they couldn't set up these hacker groups successfully. So we have no evidences that a cyber terrorist attack has ever happened in the cyberspace. That doesn't mean that there were no terrorists in the cyberspace, because, for example, we know one guy who joined the ISIS as a hacker, and his name was Junaid Hussain, and he was also known as Trick. He was the founder of the Team Poison group, one who has stolen his online game account. Surprisingly large number of hackers had started his career following this offense, stealing the online gaming account. He founded this Team Poison group, which was a pro-Palestinian activist group, when he was 15 years old, and he had a lot of successful attacks against the British government and against the NATO systems, so he was quite a successful hacker. Well, not supporting the Western ideas, but he was pro-Palestinian, so he got closer and closer towards the ISIS. And he joined the ISIS. His name was Abu Hussein, and as he was a major threat, as a well-educated hacker from the United Kingdom, because he had a British citizenship, so as he became one of the major threat from the cyberspace of this terrorist group, he became the third on the kill list, on the death list of the United States, and he was executed by a US drone in Raqqa in 2015. But he's the only one who is well known, because although there were some initiatives by the different terrorist groups to be more active in the cyberspace, the terrorist groups are using mainly the cyberspace for propaganda, for recruitment, for contacting with the future terrorists and the actual terrorists. And they are using the cyberspace for operational preparation. So just think on Hezbollah, for example. And during the last few months, for example, we could see that how the Hezbollah is spreading this propaganda, how they are getting close to their future terrorists through the recruitment in the cyberspace, how they are contacting each other, and how the Israeli counter activities disrupted that chain of the Hezbollah by, for example, just blowing up the Hezbollah members by implementing some explosive into the pagers, or how they can rule the cyberspace and not letting the Hezbollah terrorists to work together in the cyberspace and use it for operational preparations, because it's getting dangerous, because the Israeli intelligence units are actively trying to gather this kind of activities from the cyberspace of this group. So the terrorist groups are actively using the cyberspace, but not for the intention to destroy people or destroy or damage different buildings, for example, through the cyberspace, like hacking into, I don't know, an energy system, and to hack that kind of energy system and let it to be explode, for example. So that will, I wouldn't say never happen, because never say never, but I think that cyber terrorism itself has very little possibility, very small possibility. Why? Because in the past it turned out that the large national counterintelligence or intelligence services like the GCHQ in the United States, for example, are actively trying to disrupt the activities of the cyber terrorist groups. So in 2018, for example, the JCHQ had a very rare open presentation on the activities, and it was said that the UK has conducted a major offensive cyber campaign against the Islamic State group. The director of the intelligence agency JCHQ has revealed. So they were very active and they were very successful, and well, we cannot see any cyber operations from neither ISIS nor from other terrorist groups. So the cyberspace itself is ruled by the large countries' intelligence units, so the possibility of cyber terrorism is very small. But there are some actual problems, because the encrypted communications are absolutely a good source, as we could see, for the cyber criminals, for the hacktivists, for the terrorists, for the spies, by the way. So now the actual question is that how to get information from the cyberspace by the national security units, because now the communication itself is over encrypted, if I can use this one. I'm a great fan of encryption, so no problem that all the internet related data and communications are encrypted, but from the law enforcement perspective, except maybe the United States and maybe except China, it's very, very difficult for the national security to get the information of future problems, or get the information for military intelligence, for example. So not surprisingly, even at the Russian-Ukrainian war, Telegram is one of the major tool for communication, encrypted communication on both parties. So it's not surprisingly, okay, that was a surprise, but after that it's not so surprising that Pavel Durov, who is the founder of Telegram, was arrested in France. Who knows why? The official saying is that because of the content moderation failures. But it is obvious that the Telegram, as one of the major source of digital information, is something that the countries are willing to follow, willing to wiretap, because it is needed for from intelligence perspective, and of course it is widely used by criminals and terrorists. So from the counter from the counter-terrorism and a counter-crime perspective, it might be interesting and important for as well. But what happens when the nations are getting into war with each other? I need to quote here Sun Tzu again. Sun Tzu said that in all fighting, the direct method may be used for joining battle, but indirect methods will be needed in order to secure victory. Indirect tactics efficiently applied are inexhaustible as heaven and earth, unending as the flow of rivers and streams, like the sun and the moon. They end but begin anew, like the four seasons, they pass away to return once more. In general, if you want to win a war, you need to have some dirty little tricks as well, indirect methods. And the cyberspace is definitely something that can be used as a direct and an indirect way to influence the other parties in case of war. And we could see so many examples during the time of hybrid warfare. Hybrid warfare is a situation of the not yet war but not yet peace. The hybrid warfare is what is actually happening in the European Union And the hybrid warfare is waged by Russia, and what they are willing to be willing to support their current military activities in Ukraine, just to have a war against the West as well. Meanwhile, just yesterday, when I'm streaming and recording this one, yesterday, for example, the Russian ambassador in the United Kingdom had an interview and he stated that the UK is leading the hybrid war against Russia. So now both countries, the European Union and Russia, both thinking that they are the victims of some kind of hybrid warfare. But what is a hybrid warfare? According to the definition, hybrid threats cover the whole spectrum of warfare, including conventional capabilities, irregular warfare and formations, terrorist actions using indiscriminate violence and coercion, and criminal unrest. Hybrid warfare can be conducted by both state and a wide variety of non-state actors. These diverse activities may be carried out by isolated units or even by the same units, but their overall operational and combat management and coordination is carried out on the main battlefield in order to achieve synergistic effects in both the psychological and physical dimensions of the conflict. These effects can be achieved at all levels of war. And if we just go through the different sets of hybrid warfare, we can see there are cyber attacks like data breaches, distributed denial of service, disrupt, deny, degrade of civil infrastructure, and we can see also the information operations in social media, the public disinformation, and the engineered reporting. So the cyberspace itself is a very fruitful space for hybrid warfare activities. So not surprisingly, more and more countries in this tensed world, in this new and changing world, are using the cyberspace for hybrid warfare. They are not willing to have a direct war in the physical space, but I think that more and more countries are now really in this hybrid warfare and using the cyberspace for influencing, and not just influencing, because the information environment itself has three different dimensions: the physical dimension, the information dimension, and the cognitive dimension. And it means that the countries are attacking each other's infrastructure in all the dimensions. The physical dimension, which means what? It means the infrastructure. So the computers. So countries are attacking each other computers and trying to destroy the computers sometimes. And they are also targeting the information dimension. What does it mean? The data and the software around the data, which creates the information. Well, hacking is absolutely in the information dimension. And they are fighting with each other in the cognitive dimension as well. What is a cognitive dimension? Our mind. What are we thinking about the current situation? And then just today, when I'm streaming this video, there is an election in Moldova, and they need to decide whether they want to join to the European Union. Yesterday, based on it was on Sunday. But so they are now choosing between the European Union and Russia, and it's half-half. So the Russian hybrid warfare was quite successful in Moldova, because half of the Moldovanians decided to stay close to Russia. But the other, from the other perspective, the European hybrid warfare in that sense was also very successful, as half of the citizens decided to join to the European Union. So the cognitive dimension is on how a nation, or how a set of nations can convince the citizens that their approach, their viewpoint is the best one. And at the end of the day, the countries are fighting for reaching the cyber superiority, the superiority in the cyberspace, which has three different aspects. First, they are using various electronic and IT data collection devices, sensors and communication tools to provide information on the other party's capabilities, its own capabilities, and the environment. Second, impede the operation of the other party's network info communication systems, restrict and impede the processing and transmission of information, and influence decision makers and personnel through info communication networks. And third, protect its own network information capabilities and its own decision makers, and staff against various logical and physical electronic attacks and attempts to influence the other party's network. So we are trying to gather as much information from the enemy as possible. We are trying to protect our environment from the foreign attacks as much as possible. Meanwhile, we are trying to use we are trying to have an effect on the other side's computer as much as possible. So these three aspects are helping us to reach the cyber superiority. With what? With cyber weapons. We are trying to protect ourselves from cyber weapons, and of course we are using cyber weapons against our enemies in case of a war. But what is a cyber weapon? According to the Tallinn manual, the rule 103, I quoted the Tallinn manual before, the cyber weapon is the tool of cyber warfare are cyber weapons and related cyber systems. Cyber warfare is the cyber tactics, techniques and procedures used by the adversaries. A cyber weapon is one that is used, designed or intended to be used to cause injury or death to persons or damage or destruction to objects. So a cyber weapon is a malicious code which is using an infrastructure, and it is used in wartime with the intention to destroy human or destroy objects. So, for example, the distributed denial of service attack that has happened in Estonia in 2007 was not a cyber weapon, because there was no war between Estonia and Russia. It was not created to damage or destroy the objects, or the Russians didn't have the operational capabilities to do that during this time. A malicious code that does not meet the above conditions, so for example ransomware, is not a cyber weapon because it is not created, it is not used in wartime, and it is created to get money and not to destroy objects. A sophisticated zero-day used for spying, so for example the well-known Pegasus, is not a cyber weapon because it is used for gathering information and not to destroy the objects. And maybe it is used in wartime, but it was used in peacetime as well. A solution used primarily for defense, for example a weaponized honeypot, is also not treated as a cyber weapon. But what is a cyber weapon? Maybe the Stuxnet, the well-known Stuxnet that has attacked the Iranian nuclear facilities during the end of the 2000s, the early 2010s, can be counted as a cyber weapon, but not exactly, because there was no war between Iran and the United States and Israel. So although I would say that it was a cyber espionage, but more than a cyber espionage, because it hasn't had an effect on the Iranian nuclear facilities. So it is very close to a cyber weapon, but it is not still a cyber weapon. But for example, the NotPetya in 2017 that was created against Ukraine, it was used in wartime because Russia and Ukraine was in wartime during that time. It was created to destroy objectives and maybe for humans. It can be counted as a cyber weapon, and that is, I think, the best example for a cyber weapon. And if we just analyze those cyber weapons which was started at the beginning of the Russian-Ukrainian war in 2022, those Vipers which were started in Ukraine and at the end of February and the beginning of March in 2022, those were very similar to the NotPetya, and those are an example that how we can imagine a cyber weapon. So, cyber espionage, cyber warfare, cyber crime, cyber terrorism, activism. Originally, they were separate sets of cyber threats. But nowadays, everything is connected. A country which has any kind of capabilities in the cyberspace, they are using all the cyber threats in order to reach their goals. Of course, the Western countries are trying to follow the code of conduct of warfare and maybe don't have that clear connection towards activist group, for example, or cyber criminal groups. It can be clearly seen that Russia, for example, is using any kind of cyber threats against the West. And they are not trying to hide as much that they have, besides their secret services, they also have a close connection towards the patriotic hacker groups or the anonymous groups. which are supporting Russia, or they have a close connection towards the Russian-based cyber criminal groups, but they are doing everything to reach the cyber superiority. Meanwhile, the United States itself, for example, shouldn't have its own proxies. Maybe they have some indirect connections towards the anonymous groups, but we don't have any evidences, so this is just a huge maybe. But they are trying to follow the international laws, and they are setting up the cyber warfare and cyber espionage capabilities like most of the Western countries. But in general, they are trying to, these different sources of threats are getting too close to each other. So when someone is joining to a hacker community and become one of the attacker in an activist activity, for example, maybe indirectly they are supporting a nation's intention. When a young hacker is joining to a cybercrime group, for example, maybe also supporting some nation's intention in the cyberspace. So it's not clear that who is with who. It's not really clear that what is the clear distinction between state and non-state activities. It should be, because the international law clearly defines the differences between the different activities, but it's more blurring than it was before. So until the mid-2010s, it was clear what is the difference between cyber terrorism, activism, cyber warfare, and so on and so on. But now, 10 years after that, it's not so clear, because all the countries are willing to have an effect on each other. And this makes cyberspace a very unpredictable space, because no peace can be seen on the cyberspace. No real agreement can be found from the nation state perspective that how should they treat, for example, cybercrime. Everything is very, very foggy nowadays, and that will cause a lot of problems. It's causing now and will cause in the near future as well. But hopefully one day the countries will get back to the original agreement on the piece of cyberspace, which was seemingly where they were very close around 2015, 2016, and everything was ruined from that point. So hopefully we have a base when we should go back. And the Western countries are still saying that the base can be found there. International law, international norms are existing in the cyberspace. That is the base. And if we can go back somehow, and we don't suffer by the so-called splinter net, the divide between the West and the East, maybe we can go back. But unfortunately, I'm very pessimistic on that. But we will see. We are living in the West, and we have to follow, and I think it's good to follow that kind of rules, what we agree in the European Union, what can be also read from the strategy of the European cybersecurity strategy of the European Union. So let me finish my presentation with these thoughts. I hope that you enjoyed this presentation, and I will just now check the comments. So if you have any comments, any questions, feel free to ask. I will check the comments, if any. Let's see. Do we have any comments, any feedback, anything? If not, in the live session, of course, anytime you can comment this live after that. My students who are attending the Introduction to Cybersecurity class, of course, you can reach me via email if you want. We will have an online section as well later on. So, no comments? In that case, thank you very much for your attention for today. See you later in another chapter of the Introduction of Cybersecurity. Bye-bye.